Hello, everyone. Welcome to St. John's Methodist Church, our weekly devotional. This is beginning so that we can make sure, as the goal is for this year, for every member of our church to not only read through each of the four Gospels, but to study each chapter of the Gospels as we go throughout the year. We just finished the Gospel of Mark, which is a short enough book that if you were able to come to the Wednesday night services and you were able to come to Sunday morning worship services, you would have studied every chapter of the Gospel of Mark as we went through them. But now that we are getting into the longer of the four Gospels, it is not possible for that to happen just on Sundays and Wednesdays. So therefore, we have the weekly devotionals that will be part of what we do to make sure that each person has the ability to study each chapter of the Gospels as we move forward. We began the Gospel of John on Easter morning, and we are now in the Gospel of John for our weekly devotionals. Today, we will be in the third chapter. Hear what the Gospel of John has to say to us this week. The third chapter of John, verses 22 through 30. After this, Jesus and his disciples went into the region of Judea, and he spent some time there with them and baptized. John also was baptizing at Anon near Salim, because water was abundant there, and people kept coming and were being baptized. John, of course, had not yet been thrown into prison. Now a discussion about purification arose between John's disciple and a fellow Jew. They came to John and said to him, "Rabbi, the one who was with you across the Jordan, to whom you testified, here he is baptizing, and all are going to him." John answered, "No one can receive anything except what has been given from heaven. You yourselves are my witnesses that I said I am not the Messiah, but I have been sent ahead of him. He who has the bride is the bridegroom. The friend of the bridegroom who stands and hears him rejoices greatly at the bridegroom's voice. For this reason, my joy has been fulfilled. He must increase, but I must decrease." This passage that depicts a little bit of a confrontation, if you will, between the disciples of John the Baptist and Jesus's flourishing and beginning ministry is an interesting thing for us in the modern day to read through, because we in the modern day have things that are similar to this happening all around us. So many times we look around, especially those of us inside the church, we look at other churches as competition. We look across the road, we look down the street, we look across town, we look at all these different churches and their sizes, their strengths, their weaknesses, their ministry settings, the amount of people that come to their church services, the size of their staff. There's so many different numbers and things that we can use to, for lack of better terms, judge a church. Are they stronger than us? Are they weaker than us? And it gets even worse when we start to see members of our home church going elsewhere. We start to ask those questions of what are they doing that we aren't doing? What are we doing that's wrong? What can we do differently? All these things, because we feel like we are in competition with each other. What John is trying to teach his disciples is that is not how the kingdom works. That's how the world works, but that's not how the kingdom works. When John's disciples look across the river and see Jesus baptizing other people, and they start to see people that have been their members, people that had followed their master in John and had been listening and being baptized by John, now going across the river to Jesus and being baptized by Jesus, they're at a loss. They look at it and say, well, we knew that Jesus was important, and we knew that Jesus was someone that you testified to, John, but we figured that he would go do his own thing. He's now encroaching on our thing. What are we supposed to do? And John's answer to this goes to a analogy within the wedding vows and within marriage. Now, this is a very interesting way of John telling them, but what John tells them is that Jesus is the bridegroom. right? He is the one who is the husband, right? And that the church, the people, are the bride. But what he tells them is that I am not the bridegroom. I am the friend, or in modern language, we would call this the best man, or the maid of honor, right? This is the best friend to the one getting married. Their job is to prepare and take care of the groom, or in this case, the bride, to make sure that the wedding goes well. But no one expects for the best man or the maid of honor to take the vows of marriage. They're not there for that. They're there to make sure that the bride and the groom get there and take the vows together. John recognizes the fact that he has never been the groom. His job was to make sure that the bride was ready for the groom. And so his job has already been fulfilled. But the other interesting piece of what John is trying to say here is that the kingdom doesn't look for numbers. The kingdom doesn't look for size or power or strength. The kingdom looks for what is your purpose. And John recognizes his purpose. And he says, we have fulfilled our purpose because all of those people that came to the river the first time, all those people that have been listening to me, all those people that have been baptized and been listening to the sermons and have started to see it, they now are seeing what I was trying to get them to see. They are now going to Jesus. They are going to the true Messiah. They haven't mistaken me for the Messiah. They now see the Messiah and they are going that direction. And he's telling his disciples, this is the way it's supposed to work. And so for us, we have the same issue, don't we? Not just inside the church, but in our daily lives. We look across the street and we see someone with a better car and we covet the car. We look down the hallway at our offices and we see someone who has a better office or a better job or more people under them. Or we look across the street in our businesses and say, well, they do the same similar thing, but they have twice as many customers. The question is, what is your purpose? Not how big can you be? A dear friend of mine, when I was in my previous church, we had a ministerial alliance. We were working on community service that we were going to do. And we were trying very hard to make sure that each church had a place in the service, a prominent place in the service, because we didn't want to elevate one church over another. And we were struggling because there were certain things that didn't seem as elevated as another. And we were really trying to be ecumenical in our way of doing things. And finally, one of our colleagues stopped the whole procedure. And he said, I think the true answer that we have is the fact that if any one of our churches increases, then all of our churches increase. Because at the end of the day, our job is not to make the biggest church with the biggest budget and the most people in the seats and the biggest building. But our job is to bring people closer to Christ. And if I believe, and if you believe that each of our churches does that, then at the end of the day, it doesn't matter which church gains more membership. It matters the fact that the kingdom has gained more people. The kingdom has gained more souls. I've always taken that to heart. That doesn't mean that we don't want to bring more people in, but it does mean that when we look at our fellow brothers and sisters, we rejoice that the kingdom is being built, even more than our building or our church. So I have a couple of questions that I would like you to think about, try to answer over this next week between now and the next time you come to church or the next time you get to listen to the devotional. Here are the 3 questions that I'd like you to think about. The first, where am I tempted to seek recognition instead of pointing to Christ? The second, what would it look like for Jesus to increase in my daily life? And third, what is one practical way I can practice humility this week?